I was introduced to Guillermo about 3 years ago when he had a screening of Kronos. A mutual friend of ours, Matthew Robbins, who's a director, said you two should meet. And we met very briefly and shook hands. A couple years later, I got a call from Guillermo. He asked me if I would take a look at this project he had in development, and he thought that I'd be interested in getting involved. And I looked at its short treatment, and I was right away struck with just an amazing opportunity in the sense that the insect world is so alien, unlike anything that we deal with on our scale.
Originally, in the short film, they were not roaches. They were scarabs, they were beetles. And I liked that much better, and we had done some designs, and then somewhere in the process of the short is when Michael Phillips suggested cockroaches, and Bob Weinstein grabbed onto it. And I always disliked it because, first of all, the wings of the cockroach, I thought they were not that great for the coat. I wanted them to be black. There's descriptions of angels in very old writings where they say that the angels are black as obsidian. And I love that description, the idea that they would be shiny and black, you know, really beautiful, but sort of imposing and like a sculpture in onyx. And the cockroach has a really reddish brown, really horrible, and I disliked it.
Once we began to actually develop the creature, his main concern was that we follow science and nature. He didn't want to just go off on some abstract tangent and just create some jumble of stuff just because it was scary.
Guillermo brought in a lot of real-life macro photography of real insects, and the edict was to always go to nature to justify something. There are examples in our creatures of details and functionality and physical aspects of it that go right to a certain type of bug.
We tried to base the design of them as faithfully on the anatomy of two species, mantids and cockroaches. These two species for many years were classified very close together, if not together, fused almost, but as entomology advanced, they separated. And I thought their DNAs would be able to be recombined and create the Judas.
He really wanted it to be a distillation of what that family of insect has to offer, distill that down and take what works and make it in the end so that if you actually knew a lot about science, you'd go, geez, you know, they had the right number of body parts, and you know, that's right, that behavior does really exist in this kind of a creature. So as a designer, that forced me to look into a smaller area for solutions. It kind of defines the palette, defines the scale of the undertakings. Guillermo is extremely visual and he draws very well. It was great for me to play myself off of him and take what he was talking about and kind of give my spin and put it back in his court. It was very much a volleying. I've never had such an interactive experience with another person.
We did a set that was called The Bible, that Ty Ruben Ellingson did. And in The Bible, we broke it down into number of joints. We tried to be very, very scientific about the sex organs, where the lungs would be, what the shape of the body would be in order to architecturally support the larger structure.
First time we see the young nymph, it's running around inside of a little cardboard box. And it's primarily real anatomy of a cockroach, which we've kind of modified to give it a more kind of stealth, evil razor blade type of appearance. The cockroach itself is made up of a head, a body, and a tail. We've taken those things and given them their own kind of mutation kind of effect here, which is a larger head, which can have a more vicious set of mandibles in it. The body is smaller and slender and kind of built like a bodybuilder. And the tail has been diminished quite a bit to just kind of like a blade. The idea is that it's all about biting, you know, it just goes straight from the position in the box, flies out and bites the hell out of Susan.
we have here is a near final mechanical test of our Mimic Hero head. If you look over here, you can see that we've got our head moving. And this is a pretty good anatomical reconstruction of how a real cockroach's mouth parts work.
The mandible structure is more praying mantis than cockroach, because I think it's more interesting. But it's a mixture. You know, we went in and we named every piece of those movable jaws, you know, the palpi, the piece of the mouth that is a grinder. We really made anatomical Judas.
Once Rick's sculptors were brought into the mix, they took these simplistic designs and really embellished them with all the detail that they have under their command as sculptors.
And you can see that when it's closed up, it's kind of human-like in its form. Sort of looks like a thumb and a couple of fingers there. But then he's got a nice deadly slashing and stabbing claw, and then these spikes to do some real damage. Basically, these things are big puppets, and they have a lot of cables and things, controls hanging outside of them, and people to operate them, and they can be very cumbersome to move. We'll go up to 16 puppeteers sometimes to make these creatures move.
Sir, the time?
The Mimic is all about death, and I thought it was advantageous to introduce kind of a skull motif. Of course, all the head components have to fit inside of this mandible set. When the Mimic is trying to imitate a human, it places its hands over its face like this, and these exterior portions of the claws imitate the mouth and the nose and the eyes. So beyond just designing the creature head, we had to design what would be the human head, which was, in Guillermo's mind, like this horrific specter.
In the terms of the 3D mimicry, like the face of a man, or light was fundamental. For example, when Susan is putting together the face, I have a glow stick moving around, and finally it settles and illuminates the face the right way. If a mimic steps into Fifth Avenue at 3 p.m., you know, the army would be there in 15 minutes. But if they are in dark tunnels, dark alleys, under flickering fluorescent lights, and they move really fast and between columns, you could buy the illusion. Light was definitely vital, and working with the DP, Dan Lauston, was vital to make the mimics look good as much as possible.
The director's vision is important. So working with Guillermo was great because we have a very similar sensibility, and he was able to articulate to me really what his interests were. We need it to be fast. We need it to be scary. It has to be alien but believable. It has to have a viciousness that reads quickly. Those key words and ideas, then I go back and sit down and just start thumbnailing out ideas. Basically, in my approach is to look at forms, drawing insect forms from the real world, modifying them and so forth until I come up with like an icon or a basic design that I think is dynamic.
We came up with a really good stuff. If God ever plans to do a giant cockroach, he should put a call into Ty Rubin. He really figured it out.